everyone, welcome back to my channel. I'm Kayla and it's time to crack into a good book. So today's video is going to be a wrap up of books 11 through 20 that I've read in May. And we had some not so great books here, and mostly just this one particular book, which you would probably guess if you watch my vlog. But other than that, you know, like for the most part, things were pretty positive. We'll go from the lowest rated to the highest rated. And no surprise, probably to anybody, the lowest rated is a 2-star for me, and that was Legacy of Ash by Matthew Ward. So I did actually finish this, and I know like so many of you in my like watching the vlog and you know just like commenting and everything, they're like, everybody was like, Kayla, just DNF it. And I was even like, okay, I'm gonna do this, I'm gonna DNF it, I'm gonna do it. And then I just like kept picking up the book and I eventually finished it, but it was a struggle. So this was, it started off as being a buddy read with Mahalia from Nerd It This Way, and I ended up obviously like finishing it, and she was a bit further back in the book, and I was like, just save yourself. You know, like she was having very similar feelings to me. I was like, let's just scrap this and do a different buddy read. This, I'll attempt to give you my best impression of what this is about. Like, so, you know, just like reading the synopsis on the back of the book, we have this Tretian Republic falling, and we have 3 characters that the back of the book mentions. So we have Victor, who is like a champion of the Republic, and he's a really great warrior with a secret, and that secret is like, has to do with shadowy things, I'll just say. Then we have Josiri and Callan, I think, and they are like the kids of this woman who tried to rebel, and Josiri is a political prisoner, and he like kind of wants to restart his mother's failed rebellion, and then Callan is kind of like trying to live her own life and like free herself of their family name, I guess. There's war, and these characters must band together, and I don't know, that's basically all I can tell you about this. Like, this was a major struggle. Prologue was amazing, and then it just like really went downhill from there. So basically, I think the main thing, and this is so weird because like obviously I've read other like epic high fantasies before that have a huge cast of characters, like A Song of Ice and Fire, but for some reason this particular book, like, I don't know, I guess I kind of assumed based on the back of the book it would be mostly focused on these 3 characters' points of view, but really we follow this huge cast of characters throughout, and like each chapter would switch multiple characters' points of view, so like that made it a little bit confusing. Like I think each chapter should have just been solely focused on one particular character, but like, yeah, just like jumping, I mean, there would be like a tiny little like paragraph space or whatever, but I don't know, it was just a lot to keep up with. To me, I mean, I think these 3 main characters and another character who's kind of like this demon, they stood out a bit more, but everybody else kind of blended together, and I just had a really difficult time distinguishing anyone. So basically, and this like problem lasted through the entire book, and I was like, I still don't know who anybody is. So that's kind of like not a great sign. I think there were some cool ideas and, you know, people and moments, whatever. There's some battles and war, which were interesting. There's kind of like these shadowy bird people, I think. They like are working for the god of death, and it wasn't clear to me if they were actually like some sort of bird person or what exactly. There was like this imprisoned demon, there were, you know, gods, goddesses. So like that was interesting, and like there's a lot of great ideas, but just like overall, I think the lack of distinguishing characteristics for all these people just made it really challenging for me. Like, this definitely works for some people. I have seen very positive reviews from some people I follow, but for me, this just was not successful. So, you know, like I knew fairly early on that this was going to be a bit of a struggle. I should have DNF'd it, but you know, stubborn old me, I was like, no, I'm gonna do it, I guess. But anyway, yeah, so I unfortunately would not recommend this. So now we move to the 3-star category, and the I think only book I'll talk about here is One Way by S.J. Morden. So I buddy read this with Kat from Prison Reviews. This is a sci-fi kind of thriller, I guess, where our main character Frank is recruited for this mission to Mars along with 7 other inmates. And basically, once they arrive on Mars, accidents start happening, and Frank kind of suspects that they're not actually accidents and is trying to investigate them because, like, obviously people are dying. This was a really great idea. You know, like, I love close circle murder mysteries, and in space, like, that would be even better. But I think the execution just wasn't quite there. It was a little bit disappointing. Pacing was a little strange. So in my blog, I had mentioned, like, you know, we spent the first 100 or so pages kind of training and everything. So, like, on one hand, it makes sense because, like, obviously you can't just, like, send people to space without training them. But I think for me, I didn't expect that particular portion of this story to last so long, because this is, like, you know, 330 something page book, I think. So a third of it being training and not on Mars was just not really what I anticipated. And, like, it's not bad, it's just, again, not what I anticipated. There's definitely parts of the book that were kind of dull moments, and then it would be like, you know, we'd go from, like, murder to kind of, like, investigating some things, and then just, like, dull moment, and then murder, and, you know, like, repeating that over and over. So, yeah, I think the pacing was just generally uneven. I am kind of bummed that we didn't get more suspense here. Like, and I kind of mentioned this in the vlog, Kat definitely predicted what would happen, and, like, if you read it, there's really only one solution that it could be. So I feel like they could have done a better job giving us multiple suspects and, like, reasons why these accidents are happening, things like that. The side characters themselves, you never really get the best sense of who they are. Like, you kind of get these characteristics and, you know, just, like, why they were in prison. And, for example, there was, like, a doctor who had been mercy killing people, and I still am not entirely sure if that was actually mercy killing based on, like, people asking her to, or just taking things into her own hands. Then, you know, we had a lot of these people are just defined because of, you know, like, why they went to prison, basically. And then they die, so you don't really, like, get very attached to any of them. So this was fine, like, I still enjoyed it, but I just wanted more from it, I think. So there's actually another 3-star book that I wanted to talk about, and it's an ebook, so that's why I kind of spaced it in this little process, since I don't have it physically in front of me. But that is Post-Apocalyptic Paradise by Alestarious Blac, and he sent it to me for review, so thank you. So this is kind of like a dystopian sci-fi kind of superhero vibe. Basically, the premise here is, I think Russia and the US got into this war, and the planet kind of just gets wrecked, and there's, like, a whole bunch of, like, radiation, and it's just kind of like a desert wasteland. There's, like, various mutated creatures and things like that. So our main character, Wyatt, has been alone for 6 years, and he's trying to find purpose in his life. And one thing I guess that I'll just go ahead and mention here is that kind of the purpose of this book is to, I guess, have a discussion about depression and, you know, things of that nature. Like, I guess it's kind of like a foreword to the book. The author kind of talks about, like, you know, there's going to be some very heavy topics here, like depression, suicidal thoughts, but, like, ultimately it will get better, and just, like, that's, like, the overall, you know, like, don't give up, there's hope message. Going back to the story, Wyatt is trying to find purpose in his life, and, like, throughout the story, he kind of gets this cybernetic arm, so that's, like, really powerful and super cool. And then, like, also along the way, he finds out secrets, happiness, and kind of, like, this reason to fight. There were some really great ideas. Like, I liked these powers of this arm. A lot of them had to do with healing, which I thought was really interesting. And just, like, I don't know, it definitely felt like a superhero moment. Like, there were so many cool powers that I could do, so I really enjoyed that. It read very quickly, and again, this kind of reminds me of a superhero movie, like, very action-packed. It doesn't really let up at all, I think. Our main character, Wyatt, seems like a genuinely nice person. He definitely wants to help people out, which I can appreciate. There's, like I kind of mentioned, these really interesting creatures, so, like, people and animals have kind of been mutated, so you get, like, these weird hybrid creatures. And I had read somebody mention, in some other review, someone had mentioned, like, zombies, but I felt like the mutated humans didn't necessarily read like zombies, but just kind of strange mutated humans. I don't know. Or just, like, not the typical zombie that I would necessarily expect. But anyway, you know, all this being said, there are a lot of great ideas, but it wasn't entirely perfect for me. Like, I think I didn't necessarily fully believe in all of these character relationships. I think, and just, like, generally speaking, like, things did move very quickly, so we kind of missed out on the development of these character relationships, and some events, like, happened where I was like, oh, I don't know if I fully buy that necessarily. For example, there's, like, a fairly graphic torture scene, and then just, like, a few chapters later, the person being tortured and the torturer are, like, cool with each other, and I was like, I don't know if I necessarily buy that. So I feel like, you know, some more time could have been spent developing these relationships, and like, you know, in that particular case, like, I don't know, more time between those two events, between, you know, like actually getting tortured and forgiving that person. Generally, in terms of other character relationships, like there's this kind of mentor-mentee relationship that seemed really nice, and like kind of this love interest as well that develops. And in both cases, I think a little bit more time could have been spent to make me believe that those were actually like really deep connections. There is a bit of a cliffhanger ending as well, I thought. And then there was a couple of like phrasing choices that made me a little uncomfortable. For example, there's some quote, like something along the lines of like, "Are you done having a gay moment?" And then the word retarded is thrown around a couple of times. So that, you know, that made me a little uncomfortable. But moving past that, I do want to mention, obviously, there are these content warnings for suicidal thoughts and depression. And I mentioned this like pretty graphic torture scene that is definitely present. I really liked how the author was trying to be relatable and wants people to know that things do get better. So now we'll move into the 3.5 star range. The first book I'll talk about here is The Entity Game by Shearin. So she actually reached out to me and asked if I wanted to review it, and this just came out like May 12th, I think. She like emailed me and was like, "Hey, do you want a copy?" I was like, "Yes." So a little bit of a background here. I've done an author spotlight for her before, but I started reading her books in high school, and like it's been just like a whole thing, and I really enjoy her books. Actually, my character in D&D is like kind of loosely based on what the main character, Rain Benares, from that particular high fantasy series of hers. So, you know, just like fun little tidbits. Anyway, the Entity Game is a sort of a new series for her. And this is more of like I guess like urban fantasy, paranormal thriller. The premise here is that a U.S. senator and his aide both die of heart attacks, and this is like very suspicious because it kind of happened at the same time, and the senator and his aide are different ages, so, you know, like it's a little too much coincidence there. The FBI isn't investigating this, and they have this special branch for these kind of like strange cases. Our main character, Aurora, or Rory, ends up like consulting because the senator is a family friend, and our main character and her family all have these special powers. They have like psychometric powers, so she in particular can like touch objects or people and read them, basically. So she could like pick up a watch and, you know, like experience that person's last moments, or, you know, memories of wearing that watch, or something like that. Her investigation kind of like leads to this secret government project, and kind of this like competition to be the best at like a supernatural powerhouse, I guess. So this was pretty good. I certainly enjoyed my time with it, but I will say it is definitely a different tone than the Rain Benares or SPI file series. Like those have a lot of humor in them. This one felt much more serious in tone, and like that's not a bad thing, it's just different. Though I will say, like, I kind of missed a little bit of the snark and humor from the other two series. I did really like the premise. Like, this is exactly the type of book that I love. You know, like, government agents with some sort of secret powers investigating murders, like, that is my jam. So I was all over this. I really liked our main character. She's like super close with her grandfather, and her grandfather actually ends up helping with this case as well, which I thought was neat. So, you know, just like these fun little family connections. I totally bought it, and I loved it. I also enjoyed how she actually uses her powers. Like at the beginning, one of the very first scenes, she's kind of like returning from this poker game, and she can like obviously like read the cards and kind of, you know, read other people. And so she's like super skilled at poker and had been like trying to obtain money to buy a motorcycle. So I just thought that was kind of fun. This whole secret like government project idea is really interesting, and certainly has some like pretty bad consequences for sure. So I'm definitely interested in continuing. I think that this is a very promising start to this new series. The next 3.5 star book I'll talk about is You Let Me In by Camilla Bruce. So this was not at all what I anticipated. This was strange. Cassandra, a novelist, has kind of disappeared without a trace, and she leaves behind her story for her nephew and niece to read, and is basically just recounting her life. And so in her life, her husband was like mysteriously disemboweled, and like nobody knows what happened to him. And then her brother and father died in this murder-suicide. So she's had like a lot of things happen in her life. But this, again, was really not what I expected. So I went in kind of expecting like a dark murder mystery thriller type book. It's actually a fantasy, and like I should have known that because Tor published it, but like I don't know, I guess I just kind of blew over that fact. This was a lot of just like, what did I just read? And like, not necessarily in a bad way. Like, I still enjoyed it. It's a 3.5-star read. But our main character, Cassandra, can see fairies, and there's this fairy influence throughout the book. So we end up having like 2 different stories because she is the only one who can really see these fairies. So, you know, it's like, do you choose to believe what she is saying? Like, do you think that these fairies are real? Or do we think like, you know, she's maybe making these up for some reason, or, you know, she's experienced some trauma and has invented these fairies as like a coping mechanism or something along those lines. So that was really interesting. So this actually kind of reminded me of the book Little Darlings, I think, by Melanie Goulding. So I read this, I think, at some point last year, and it has, I mean, it's not like exactly the same, but it definitely has this element of like, you know, the main character kind of suspecting or thinking that there's like this fairy influence, but nobody else like believes her necessarily. So if you have read that book, like, and enjoyed it, this might be of interest to you as well. It definitely gets really dark at times, and like, I don't know, I feel like content warnings kind of depend on what story you choose to believe, like, you know, whether or not you believe that these fairies are real. But like, regardless, I would say that there are some content warnings for possible rape, child abuse, just like really not healthy relationships in general. But yeah, this is like, again, kind of unclear just due to the nature of the stories. I do feel like it was kind of hard to relate to the main character, Cassandra, at times. Like, she kind of tells her story and in like this kind of dispassionate manner at times. In terms of like the actual formatting, there is a little bit of this like mixed media formatting, which I really enjoy. So that was kind of cool. There's like newspaper clippings, and then she's like recounting her life again to her niece and nephew. This relationship that she has with this Pepperman is strange to say the least. But yeah, like, it's an odd book overall, but I did enjoy it. The last of the 3.5-star books I'll talk about is How to Hang a Witch by Adriana Mather. So this is like a YA, I guess, urban fantasy, where our main character, Samantha Mather, moves to Salem, and she's the descendant of Cotton Mather, and he's like kind of the guy who, you know, like instigated the Salem witch trials. The Descendants is this like group of girls, and the descendants of the witches, they like give Samantha a really hard time and are not very welcoming. A ghost kind of haunts Samantha, and she ends up learning that she is cursed, and like basically she needs to work with these descendants and prove that she's innocent in order to, you know, thwart this curse and save everybody. This was definitely entertaining. Like, and I think at some point it's pitched as like Mean Girls with ghosts and curses. So I really liked the setting, which is obviously it takes place in Salem, and I don't know, it felt cool to me. I enjoyed all these like spells and assorted, you know, things that we learned about the witch trials and the witches themselves. Like, the plot is pretty quick, and yeah, it's just kind of, I don't know, it's just fun. It's just a fun time. There were some negatives, I would say. Like, there's definitely a love triangle, and that is not my favorite, but it is a YA book. I didn't particularly like Jackson, who was like one of the members in this love triangle. I thought he was, like, he started off nice and then kind of just got clingy and needy, I guess. Sam herself is very hot-headed, and like, she's a teenager, but there's like a lot of teenage drama and angst, so that kind of got a little frustrating at times. I would say like the book itself reads pretty young to me, but I think that's like, obviously that's the intended audience, so that's fine. But yeah, generally, like, I did have an enjoyable time with this. So now we move to the 4-star range, and the first book I'll talk about here is Little Secrets by Jennifer Hillier. So this is an adult thriller where Marin's son is kidnapped, and about a year later, the search has kind of gotten cold, and her marriage is kind of falling apart. So she has hired a private investigator to continue investigating her son's disappearance, and this private investigator finds out that Marin's husband is having an affair with a much younger woman. So, like, basically, you know, Marin is kind of like, well, this is a problem I can actually fix. So we'll leave it at that. This was a very fast-paced thriller. There's definitely some really dark moments for sure. Like, obviously there's kidnapping. I would say there's some child abuse, adultery, obviously, some suicidal thoughts. I can certainly sympathize with Marin up to a certain point. Like, I don't know, she kind of escalates things in a manner that I would not, but, you know, in terms of thrillers, like, that's entertaining to read sometimes. I did predict some things, but I'm very pleased that I got them right, and, you know, I am, like, ultimately pleased with where the book ends up. This is one of those thrillers where, like, they give you clues and you can, like, formulate opinions and everything, and, like, I think, predict everything, so that's kind of, you know, what made me continue to want to read it. There's definitely some, like, really tense topics and moments, like the beginning of the book when Sebastian, the son, gets kidnapped is just, like, super intense, and I just flew through that part. I started it, like, fairly late in the evening, and I'm pretty sure I just, like, read 90 pages before going to bed. Just like, I need to keep reading, and I'm pretty sure I, like, ended up having dreams about it, which was weird, but anyway, like, it stuck with me. I very much enjoyed it. I had read Jar of Hearts by her last year or the year before and enjoyed that. So I had heard Rachel from the Shades of Orange talking about this book, and I think she had mentioned that a lot of Jennifer Hillier's, like, backlist of books are really strong, so I definitely am interested in checking those out as well, because this was just so much fun and the perfect type of thriller that I want. The other 4-star book I'll talk about is Final Girls by Riley Sager. So this is like a thriller with a little bit of slasher horror, I guess. Our main character, Quincy, is the sole survivor of this massacre at this cabin, so she becomes one of these final girls, so, like, the final surviving person of these massacres. So there are 2 other final girls, Lisa and Sam, and, you know, like, you learn more about them and their backstories throughout the book, but they haven't met before. So Quincy is kind of just trying to live her normal life with her boyfriend, and she's doing, like, this baking blog, and she cannot remember a single thing from that night of the massacre. So then, Lisa, one of the other final girls, is found dead in the bathtub with slit wrists. And so the other final girl, Sam, comes to visit Quincy and, like, is trying to get her to relive her past. So basically, like, secrets and truth come out. This was highly entertaining. I was feeling a little bit slumpy, mostly because, like, I mean, it took me forever to read Legacy of Ash, so I was just like, oh my god, I can't do this. So I talked with Angela from Literature Science Alliance, and I was like, I don't even know what genre I want to read, and so she was like, well, if you're feeling slumpy, like, maybe, like, I'd given her a list of options. She was like, I think you should do a thriller, because that will, you know, it's fast-paced, it'll help you kind of, like, get out of this reading slump, perhaps. So that's what I did, and this was just, like, I flew through it. So that was a very good choice. Quincy is definitely, like, a very flawed heroine, I think. I certainly appreciate how she's trying to move past this, like, super traumatic experience, and, like, she doesn't want to be defined as the final girl, and I like that. But she makes some poor decisions throughout the book and that I don't fully love. I did not expect what happened at all, and I don't know if that's just, like, me being bad at guessing stuff or if it's genuinely surprising to everybody else. I totally thought something completely different was going to happen, so yeah, it kept me on my toes, so I like that. But, like, again, going back to, like, thrillers and how I enjoy them, like, you know, I was able to formulate guesses. And even if those guesses are wrong, that's fine. It's, like, I think just, like, you know, what I don't like is just, like, not being able to guess at all because I have no idea what's happening. But, you know, this is not the case. This was full of fun speculation. And throughout the book, we have these, like, flashbacks to the Pine Cottage massacre throughout, and, like, we kind of remember with Quincy throughout the story, and I thought that was a very nice touch, and it, like, kept me guessing and, like, wanting to know more of this backstory and, like, what actually happened. I do want to read more of Riley Sager's books now. I have one of them, I think the one that's, like, at, like, a summer camp or something like that. I can't remember what that is, but I think I have that one on Kindle, and then I think he's got a new book coming out this year at some point. But yeah, I definitely want to read more of his work. I would definitely recommend this book. It was, like, a fun slasher book. Alright, so now we move into the 5-star range, and the first book I'll talk about here is Network Effect by Martha Wells. So this is the first full-length Murderbot novel, and I would say that you need to read the 4 novellas first before getting into this, otherwise, like, you'll miss out on a whole bunch of character development and these relationships that have already been established. So essentially what has happened here is that Murderbot's human crew get captured, and we have an old friend who is in need of urgent assistance. So Murderbot kind of needs to choose whether or not it wants to help or keep pretending like it doesn't care. Like I mentioned this in my blog, I did have a strangely hard time getting into this, and I still don't know if it was just because like I didn't entirely remember who everybody was, and you know, or if I just like wasn't really in the mood to read that night. I don't know. But regardless, at the end of the book, I was just like so invested and clearly loved it. So I did rate it obviously a 5 out of 5. I was very glad to see Art back, and he's, you know, like I really enjoy the friendship that develops between Murderbot and Art. Murderbot questions its relationships a lot, and you know, it's like kind of, I think, questions whether or not it can truly have friendships. So it's just nice to continue to see these sort of relationships develop throughout the books. There's definitely some crazy development and plot points that I did not expect, but I really liked it, so I'm here for that. There's, you know, I don't want to mention what it is so that you can experience it for yourself. I continue to like Murderbot so much. It's like, so Murderbot has essentially like disabled its governor module, so it's a security unit essentially, so like these would be bots hired to run security. It has disabled its governor module so it doesn't have to obey humans. You know, Murderbot is pretty grumpy and just like kind of wants to watch its shows in peace, and like I can definitely relate to that. I like how it's, you know, secretly good at heart and like wants to help people out. So it's just, I don't know, I love everything Murderbot. So yeah, I'm very interested in seeing what happens next. I highly recommend this if you are interested in sci-fi at all. The last book I'll talk about, which was also a 5-star rating, was A Good Girl's Guide to Murder by Holly Jackson. So this was just basically everything I wanted from it. So it was like, I don't know, I just loved it. This is basically like, I kind of wanted something with like the Riverdale vibes of just like teens investigating murders. It did that so well. Our main character, Pippa, or Pip, is investigating this murder of a high schooler, Andy, and the subsequent suicide of her boyfriend, Sal, about 5 years prior. And she's doing this for her senior, like, capstone project. So she essentially is, like, wanting to get this investigation reopened, and along the way kind of discovers a lot of secrets that could possibly prove that Sal didn't actually do it. So again, this was exactly what I wanted. It was very fast paced. It had some of this like mixed media aspects to it. Like there are kind of like, I don't know, transcripts of audio calls. There's some text messaging. There's like normal narratives. And then I think there's at one point like a murder board type drawing. I found Pip to be extremely relatable to high school me. Like she is an overachiever and just like constantly works hard at school, and like I don't know, I feel like her parents are like, you should go have fun, do fun things. And high school me, you know, like I had my actual teachers in my AP classes being like, Kayla, you need to chill out and take a break. Like, have some Kayla time, go watch TV. So that's like, you know, background of little old me here. But yeah, so I found Pip to be very relatable, and, you know, she's just like extremely persistent, and, you know, she doesn't make the smartest choices necessarily, just like safety wise, but I don't know, I'm here for it. I didn't really anticipate what ended up happening, so I love that. It kept me on my toes. There are some content warnings, obviously, murder, suicide, there's animal death as well. Lots of secrets being uncovered here. I definitely, again, when Pip is like kind of negligent of her safety a little bit, I felt worried at times for her. I certainly enjoyed watching her investigation unfold and like following her progression as she learned more clues. I think this is a debut, and I'm very impressed. I really want to keep reading. I think, I thought I had seen, I think the second book is already out in the UK, but not in the US for some reason. Like, I think this just came out in the US. But I am pretty sure I just saw that they had, like, whoever the publisher had like initially picked her up for 2 books, but I think they have extended it now to 4. So I'm excited. I am here for it. I will definitely keep reading this. So yeah, if you're looking for something that is kind of reminiscent of Riverdale with just like, you know, teenagers investigating murder mysteries, check this out for sure. Those are the 10 books that I have to talk to you about today. So those were books 11 through 20 that I've read so far in May. Definitely had several hits here, even though, you know, like, we'll pretend that like Sea of Ash did not drag me down like it did. But you know, such is life. Let me know in the comments if you've read any of these books or think you might pick them up. I think for your question of the day, let's go with, have you read many sci-fi murder mysteries? Because I definitely want to pick up more of those. I have read Six Wakes, right here, and really loved it. It's something I would highly recommend if you're interested in like this sci-fi close circle murder mystery with clones. Definitely pick it up. And then I have Before Mars by Emma Newman that I still need to get to. But like other than that, I feel like I don't know that many necessarily like sci-fi murder mysteries. I guess Gideon the Ninth technically was a sci-fi murder mystery, but I didn't love it. But anyway, I'm kind of rambling. So if you have any suggestions on sci-fi murder mysteries, just leave them for me. But with that, I hope you're having an excellent day and are reading something awesome. If you enjoyed this video, feel free to give it a big thumbs up, as that would certainly help me out. But with that, I think I'm going to wrap it up here and see you in the next one.